So, welcome. I am so excited to introduce Mariella today, and we are going to talk about your story. So, if you want to start by just kind of introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your family, where you're from, anything that you want to share with us.
Hi guys, I'm Mariela Gallardo. I am a mother of three. I feel like I started as a young mom, even though I was 20 at the time when I got pregnant. A lot of my friends, I'm from Brentwood, New York. I came here in Virginia about 17 years ago when my middle daughter was about 3 months old. So my journey has been a long journey. Like I was saying, I got pregnant when I was 20. I had my son right around my 21st birthday, basically. So I was due April 24th. He came April 30th, and my birthday is April 27th. So at that time, I felt super, super, super young. I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like I had this little human that I had to take care of, and basically no guidance in a sense. I guess most of my peers at the time were already parents. Unfortunately, I had a handful of friends that had 5 year olds at 20, so that's pretty young. And I felt super young as well. Even at the delivery, they didn't believe I was 21. They thought I was maybe like 18, 17 at the time. I felt like a
Wow.
baby. So my son was my firstborn. He'll be 20. I can't believe it, next month. And then I have my middle daughter who is 17, and then my youngest who's 9. Um, like I said, I
Wow.
came from Long Island. It's been 17 years here in Virginia, which I do adore. The first year was hard because, I new place, new culture, new people, but it became home. We made it work. We have our own little group of friends here who support us, who love us. So this is our home now. We do go back and forth back to New York, unfortunately for some funerals or some celebrations. We're getting to an age now in my 40s where life is different in a good
Yeah.
sense. In a good sense.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you have such a range too of just experiences and ages and everything.
Absolutely.
What do you do for work and or leisure? Like what do you like doing and yeah, what do you do with your time?
Currently, I'm an LPN. I work at a rehab center as inpatient. I love it. I love seeing the range from, unfortunately, I work in the stroke unit. So when someone has a stroke, they have deficits. For example, like your arm is not working or your leg. So you get, rehab to rebuild. So I love seeing the progress from the beginning, from their deficits to the end to the progress. I mean, they still have a journey to go. This is a new form of life for them, but I'm enjoying to see that I was a part of that journey for that patient. I used to work OBGYN for the last 20 years before working here. I loved OBGYN, same thing. I love seeing moms, educating young teen moms, because in a sense, like my sister was a teen mom, I was a young mom. So we were just basically thrown under the bus with my experience. So I
Yeah.
always wanted to educate those young mothers. Now I educate, the range of patients. They can be as young as 27, as old as 101. I had a patient who was 101. Beautiful thing. Um, let's see. So I love to dance. I used to be a Zumba instructor. I did it for 11 years. I miss it so much. But it's hard to juggle. It's hard to juggle family life. It's hard to juggle mom life, work. I want to do it all.
Yeah.
I always have a new hobby. I always have something new that I want to do with, if it comes from changing my hair, if it comes from doing new activities. I have something under my belt that's coming up soon. So I hope it works out. I will share that news when it comes, but I'm just throwing it out there that it's going to happen.
I love it. I love it. And we have so many like similarities because I used to teach a dance class too. And before I started this maternal health practice, I worked in the stroke unit for like, gosh, over 10 years. So I love that. That's so
Wow.
cool. That's
So
so awesome.
you understand the progress of a patient,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing that you could be just a little small helpful tool for them.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And I didn't realize that you were in inpatient rehab. That's really cool. That's what I do too, on the side. Um, but yeah, I love that you're well, of course I love that you're sharing your story in general, but it's also I think it's really interesting that you've had experience working with OBGYN clients and in that kind of like scenario because I'm curious, and we'll probably jump into it at some point, but how that either supported your own journey or made it more challenging or whatever, like kind of the balance there. I think that'll be an interesting thing to touch on. But so I heard that you had some C-sections, which is my love and passion as well, because that's what I went through myself. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right in and start asking you some questions about that.
Okay.
Okay. So I imagine in a lot of cases, people don't prepare for having a C-section, at least the first time. Sometimes they do for different reasons, but was yours kind of expected or unexpected the first time?
Well, so I was 4 days overdue. I had a lot of pressure, and as a first time mom, you feel all these feels, and the pressure, the uncomfortableness, the heaviness. I had cankles. My blood pressure was fine, which I was surprised, and so was my sugar. But I just blew up. I had excessive fluid, especially amniotic fluid. So the
Yeah.
doctor at the time was just basically doing monitors every day, that entire week that led up to my C-section. And then finally, I couldn't take it anymore. He took me and to induce me. So he gave me Pitocin. At the time, I didn't know much about Pitocin. Again, they just told me that, it will help you dilate. In my experience, I felt like it did more, not damage, because luckily my son was okay. But I ended up having 17 hours of labor, 2 hours of pushing. I was exhausted. They put me in every position as possible. They tried to massage. The nurses were wonderful, but the baby just decreased, his heart rate decreased. So they eventually, once they saw that drop, and I couldn't do it like physically, I have to love modern medicine, because can you imagine if we didn't have the resources we have now? Those poor
Yeah.
ladies, like, centuries late, ago. So they had to get him out by C-section, emergency C-section. I didn't get to see him for like a full 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really scary. With the C-section, you're awake, and I didn't know what was going on. It would happen so fast. I was literally shaking. So I told the doctor told me, he's like, I'm gonna put you under. You just are extremely stressed. And I'm sorry, my dog wants to be near me. um, so I remember this vividly. I remember being in the operating room, and you have your arms out, and I was shaking like a leaf. And then 1 second I was shaking like a leaf, and then the next I'm waking up from having my C-section.
Oh my
My
gosh.
husband said, boyfriend at the time, I've been with him 23 years. He didn't know what to do. He's just like, it happened so fast. The doctors got you in there. They had to put anesthesia to calm you down. So they needed to do what they needed to do to get the baby out.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening in that experience, the doctors told me that my pelvis did not expand out.
Mm.
And I don't know if I would have had some type of, because I did Lamaze, right? We
Yeah.
did the medicine ball, we did the stretching, and I'm not sure what would have helped, but it didn't expand. So the baby was basically stuck every time he tried to go in the birthing canal. I had my C-section, and luckily I had it just the regular, the cut, not the up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So my son was a healthy 8 pounds, three ounces baby boy at 4 days overdue. And yeah, he's been thriving since. He was my little bird. I
Oh.
called him my bird back then. It was challenging. I didn't know what to do. I knew that I knew the essentials, like, changing the diaper, making sure the feeding, but the other stuff that came with it, the stress, the waking up every 2 hours, trying to heal myself, being
Right.
a 1-year-old with this large scar, uh, incision. And then I had my mom at the time was telling me, you need to put the girdle. It's a faja, it's called in Spanish. She's like, you
Yeah.
gotta leave it on for a year. You gotta be careful with your stomach. She was giving me good advice, but at the same time, I just felt so stressed. Going back to the C-section, luckily I had good doctors. We had to remove the staples. It was scary.
Yeah, it's really scary, especially if
Yeah.
it's like just such a I don't know, it happened so abruptly and you're just like, oh my God, okay, do whatever you got to do. But I went through the same thing. I had the shakes on the table. Like so I was shaking like crazy. And for me, I said to the doctor, I was like, how are you going to cut me open if I'm shaking? And they were like, you're not shaking below the waist or below that area. And I was like, oh, okay. But it's terrifying
Then I
because you're
wonder
like,
what happened with me because I know they had to knock me out.
I know, right. And then, oh my gosh, just scare it, like waking up and being like, okay, what happened? And not seeing your son for 24 hours and all. And I think like too, you're not really, you hear stuff about like what you're supposed to go through afterward, but then you're not really sure. And it's all different and new. And oh, that's just, oh my gosh. So with your later births, did you have a say in the matter, or did you feel like you like had to do C-sections again, or kind of where were you with
I was in the
later?
same office, the same OBGYN office, so the doctor suggested that I should have a repeat C-section.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything other than that. I didn't experience a vaginal birth, so I was okay with it. But this was
Yeah.
more control. It wasn't so hectic and crazy. So
Yeah.
the baby was delivered 2 weeks before her due date. So she was due January 4th, and then we delivered her December 22nd.
Okay.
The reason they did that is, with the holidays coming up. And so going back to my son, I was hospitalized for 5 days. Uh, yeah, I don't think that's even heard of right now that you after C-section, usually you go home the next day or two. With her,
Yeah.
I went home the next day. And then,
Wow.
yeah. So I had her, so they're 2 years, 9 months apart.
Okay.
Completely different pregnancies. I wasn't as swollen as I was with him. I knew what to do now, like as far as making sure that I'm eating right. I try to do that with him, but that just fell out the window. But with her, I made sure I was eating right. I was walking more, hydrated. I, I was second mom, so
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
time you have the second child, you pretty much know what to do, right? And so she was born, and she was bigger. She was, I think, 8 pounds, 5 ounces, or 7 ounces, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so I never had small children, which thank God. And they all had full set of hairs. They were so cute.
Cute.
So she came out by C-section. I felt like I knew I was comfortable with my body, and I was awake with her. They didn't put me to sleep.
Good. Oh,
Yeah,
good. Good.
I was awake with her.
Yeah, that's great
So
because I
that
think
one went smoothly. They went with the same incision line. But I did notice afterwards, having my second C-section with the healing process, it took longer. And then I felt like a heaviness.
mm-hmm.
Sorry, one second. Okay, I'm back. So I felt a little bit of heaviness, and I guess that was just my body trying to heal itself, because
Mm-hmm.
you do pelvic floor, right? I felt that more with my third. So my third was the most problems that I had with my pelvis area. So that's when I first noticed it with the middle child, the second pregnancy, a second
Okay.
C-section. Um, yeah, it just it took longer for her.
Yeah. So it sounds like and I think it's helpful to hear this conversation. I hear from a lot of moms that are terrified to go through it again, a second time or a third time, because the first time is typically, in a lot of cases, not all cases, but the most traumatic. It's the most like rushed and, more urgent. But for my experience as well, and not for everyone, but it sounds like what you're saying is the second and third time were during the delivery was a little bit more like calm and not as intense and urgent, which I think really helps to hear for a lot of moms. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the recovery, there's still things that you have to go through during the recovery. So, yeah, on that note, what would you say were suggestions in your recovery that you felt were either helpful or unhelpful? So, and you can pick from any of your birth experiences, but like, were there any suggestions or tools or techniques or anything that you liked and helped you? And then on the flip side, what did you think was not helpful or was like very, the opposite end?
I wish I had a doula. I wish I had a
Oh,
doula who could help me with with the birthing. Even though I had a repeat C-section, it's still major surgery. You're getting layers and layers of incisions until they reach the baby. So it's major surgery. You need to rest. You need your health. You need to rebuild all that. So if I had someone, my husband was working at the time. He took off, the first maybe 5 days or something, and then he had to go back to work. And then it was just me with two little kids.
Yeah.
It was really hard. My son was about a year and a half, 2 years. Sorry, he was 2 years old when I had my second daughter. So I had two children in diapers. I had a recent C-section. The one thing that got me through it is I just did it. I had, I was 23 at the time, so I had my youth. And I just can't believe that some women go through through this. Um, we decided to move from New York down to here. Within the baby was 3 months old when we moved out here. We needed
Oh,
a change, a financial change, because we were struggling there. Yeah, we needed something different for our family. We needed more room. We were in a one-bedroom apartment, and then we came to a bit two-bedroom. So our family was growing,
yeah.
and my poor my poor kids. So I had both in diapers. I had both of them basically in bottle. My son was a little late bloomer. I tried everything to get him potty trained before we left, but it just wasn't working. I think he was finally potty trained when he was 3 years old, right before he went into daycare.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's so good though to hear these different stories from people, because I think a lot of times, especially when you're in the moment, you feel like you're the only one, or your child is the only one, or you're like, it's easy to jump into the comparison game of like, okay, I'm the only one experiencing this, and or my child
Mhm.
or whatever. And so I think one thing that I love about this series is just sharing all these experiences so that hopefully someone else will hear it and not feel so alone in this, and hopefully it's a little cathartic for you too to share that. I'm nodding my head along to like a lot of the things that that you've said. So yeah, no, I just hope it's helpful to hear. So with like, did you find anything, and I know yours are a little bit older now too, and so are mine, but did you find anything helpful like when you're like, okay, how do I do my life? Like, how do I lift up the kids, or get in and out of the car, or I don't just like do normal life things? Did anything in particular help you or make it challenging for you?
It was definitely challenging because they both were busy babies at the time.
Yeah.
I just gave myself more time, and if at the time I cared what people thought. So if as soon as, like, for example, my son would do a tantrum in the store, grabbed them, left the cart, and walked right out. Now, as an older mom, I just let them cry. Like, okay, you're gonna look at me, look at me. What are you gonna do? I tried already, tried everything. This
So
baby's gonna start
true.
crying, just keep crying. There was such a big difference because my youngest daughter is 10 years apart from my son and 8 from
Yeah.
my daughter. So the parenting was completely different. I had more patience with my youngest versus my two oldest. So when the
Yeah.
two oldest were little, I had little patience. Gosh, I wish I could go back and like smack myself sometimes because they were babies. They wanted to play, and I just felt like I was being judged. I don't know why. I always had that feeling. So I just make sure I gave myself time whenever I went to the store. I make sure that I had packed. Oh, you have no idea. I felt like I had a bag of snacks in one hand, a bag of diapers in the other, and then I had this ginormous stroller so my son is the stand up, and it was hand me down. I don't want you guys to think that I had, no, it was, everything was hand me down. Was not ashamed of that. I didn't have the finances to buy the latest thing, so we had WIC at the time, which was super super helpful. All three children had that allergen when so they had to get the alimentum. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that was, and then my youngest had the Nutramigen. So those are pretty expensive
Those are
formulas.
expensive. Mine were on those too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tried to breastfeed the first two. One, education. Even though I had Lamont, I didn't have the proper education with the latching and the position of the baby. With my third one, I definitely tried, and I YouTubed. I went to a class. So it was, those were the big major differences.
Yeah.
The first time moms, young moms, I feel like they need more education. They need accessible education. They
Yes.
you know, with it when it comes to the formula, to the breastfeeding, to the
Mhm.
healing, whether you had a C-section or a vaginal birth.
Yeah.
Uh, we need a community,
Absolutely. That is
a
perfect. That is,
community to help each other out, because this
yes.
is, it's not easy. It really isn't.
Not. It's not, and none of that's to scare anyone. That I think it's just the reality that for whatever reason in our culture in America, I think we don't do as well as other cultures with just being the village for new moms. I think we kind of expect that moms do it on their own and they just figure it out, and that we're strong and independent, and we are, and that's okay. But a lot of motherhood, I don't think is meant to do alone. But a lot of times we feel so
No.
isolated and alone, and it's like, ah, and that brings me back to what you mentioned. I wanted to make that side note, just because some people don't have never heard of, they might have heard of a doula for like the birth experience, but the postpartum experience, there are doulas as well, and they're out there and they're great, even if it's, and it can be expensive, but even if it's like a day or a night or a handful of nights, I think that's a great thing to ask for at your baby shower. People don't think of that, but you know, you'll get cute clothes and all that stuff down the road, but having a doula to support you for a few nights so you can just kind of, you know, relax a little bit more
Rest.
and sleep and rest, I think is a
You'll be
phenomenal
such a
gift.
better mom if you get some rest.
Exactly. And do
Because
that
if
for
mama's
yourself.
not feeling good, how are you going to be? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's okay to do that for yourself. I think we feel so guilty that we want to do things for ourselves because we have these little ones that are so dependent on us. But I think truly, like, you are a better version of yourself when you're cared for, and then you can care for others better too. And I
Mhm.
wanted to mention things like the Buy Nothing groups in your area,
I love
WIC,
my
all
buy
these things
nothing
that you
groups.
so much, right? Like all these resources are out there for a reason. And I think either I hadn't heard of a lot of them during my experience, but I'm just putting them out there and re-highlighting things that you mentioned because yeah, look for those things in your area if you're listening to this. They're super helpful. I always wanted like to try to get like these cute little things, and that's fine, but a lot of times babies like spit up or poop on them or what whatever, or you don't end up using some of the things. Like you set up the nursery and then the baby rooms in with you for however many
Right.
months. So it's okay to look for
Yeah.
these resources. And yes, Nutramigen, I mine used that and it was so expensive. So expensive.
Mhm.
But also to hear from you and other folks that all these different experiences are just a range of normal. There's not like one normal. You know, we try to do all this stuff and learn all these things about breastfeeding and different things, but there's, at the end of the day, you have to do what works for your family and what works for you. So hearing this range of normal, I think is super helpful. So thank you for sharing.
You're very
Um,
welcome.
what about your scar healing experience? Where are you at now? Where were you at like years ago? Do you feel like you did things well? Could you do things differently? Are you happy with it now? Where are you in this whole, the scar specifically?
So my third one actually had the opposite. Well, I had a C-section. So as far as like the fluid, I had less fluid. So
Oh,
she needed to be out 3 weeks before her delivery. So at 37 weeks and 1 day, and she ended up being 9 pounds, 5 ounces. She was my
wow.
big baby. So
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, it's a possibility we had our conception date wrong,
Maybe.
or my due date wrong. So she was large. Not, but she came out. My scar tissue hurt so bad with that one. I was extra careful. I did have a little bit more help with her, especially with my older children who were 10 and 8 at the time. So they were like my little helpers. Um, my husband was more patient. We both grew, from the beginning, from our 20s all the way to our 30s at that time. We were more patient with our children. He was more patient with me because at the first two sections, he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to touch me. He didn't want
I
to
was like,
help me
woo.
whatsoever. Yeah. But excuse me, the third one, just super helpful. I got to sleep a little bit more. My friends were here. My sister was here in Virginia, so they were able to help me with the baby. So going back to my C-section, I had a huge hematoma. So hematoma is like a blood buildup underneath the skin. So it looked like I had a big black and blue, and it lasted about 6 months. It took a
Wow.
long time.
Oh my God.
I was very tender and sensitive. I don't know if I mentioned this, but when you have a C-section, you know how they go through layers. They also go through nerve endings.
Yeah.
So the nerve endings just take a long time to get the sensation. But with that C-section, I don't know, maybe because I was older, it was my third one. I don't know how some women go and do 4 or 5 C-sections because that third one, it took me out. Um, and luckily I was able to get my 12 weeks off from work,
Good.
and I was able to heal. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time I was with her. We were financially stable, better than when we were in our 20s. So I got to enjoy the little things. I got to enjoy her sleep, and I got to enjoy her waking up every 3 hours. It took me 5 weeks, 6 weeks to have her latch completely. And it was a struggle. You know, I had to supplement with bottles, but I finally got her able to breastfeed, and I breastfed her until she was about 6 months old. And I think that that's huge accomplishment for me, because the first two
Yeah.
are just like, oh no, it hurts. I'm giving up. You know, they didn't latch. Okay, they didn't work out.
Yeah.
But going back to breastfeeding, you know, there's things that happen. You get engorged, you could get a block duck. That happens. It's part of it. As long as you're patient with yourself and your body, as long as you're doing like the sometimes like the ice packs, or trying to do the massages from your you know, from the axilla, underarm, all the way down to the breast. I didn't know all that before. I wish I would have known that in my 20s. So maybe they could have had a little bit more success had being breastfed, and less expensive with the Nutramigen and Alimentum.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so I ended up fixing my scar tissue, because I developed a hernia. So I
Oh.
had an abdominoplasty. The baby was born in July, so November I want to say I had it.
Mhm. Okay. Wow.
And it was the best thing I could have done for myself. You know, I did it. I wanted a mommy tuck, um, and get snatched, I guess you could say, really quick. Uh, but I did it because I was very uncomfortable. You know, my husband, he agreed with me, and it felt like I had a fourth C-section. But this time, with having an abdominoplasty, I'm gonna butcher this word. You know, when the abdomen separates,
Oh, yep. Diastasis.
the
Yep.
recti.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what happened from, you know, pregnancy number one.
Yep.
With pregnancy number three, everything is just all mushy and hard, and the hernia. So I had my scar revisioned, I had my hernia repaired, and I had my abdomen sewn back. So I was put back together. Let's put
Yeah.
back together. And I couldn't breathe. I had to learn how to breathe, because you know, your diaphragm is like all the way up here compared to it being down here. It was a struggle, but I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity and the resource and the fun, and, you know, my husband to help me with all that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
who knows what would have, how uncomfortable and miserable I would have been years to come. So I'm just glad I was able to get it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the scar now. Uh,
Okay.
so I did mention one that when they fixed me, you know how you have the lovely stretch marks. So I have one that they were connected. Now that I have my, they're like this, but you know, whatever. I'll deal with, you know, they're not being directly together again.
I kind of love it. It's like a quirky little thing. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, but it's just my body is fine.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I think, again, it's not to scare anyone. Everyone goes on a different journey and has different experiences with it. But I think it's such an interesting, like, testament to how different each experience can be, depending on how many you have and, you know, the order and all these different things. And I've never gone through like the revisions or anything like that, but there's definitely, like with my scar, I'm like, oh, it hangs over in this one specific area and not the others. And things, but I'm like, ah, it's fine. You know, it took a
Yeah.
while to get there. But yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I really appreciate you sharing that it took you I think you said 5 or 6 weeks to latch, because if I had heard that back, you know, 8 or 10 years ago with mine, I think I would have maybe stuck it out a little longer. I had some resources that, like, I saw lactation specialists and things like that, but I don't recall anyone specifically saying like it's okay if it takes you that long. In my head, 5 days was a long time or a week was a long time. And I was like, you know, well, it's not working, so I have to feed them. And I didn't really see this sort of gray area that you just described with like supplementing and still working on it. And still, I mean, that's a long time to
It
finally
is. It is.
latch. Like, that's incredible. I wish I had known that, you know? So
Right.
really appreciate you sharing
But you know,
that.
I was fortunate because the group that I had a lactation nurse. and she did
Okay.
it for 35 years. She was wonderful.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
called her, she didn't care if I called her at 12 at night, 1 in the morning, she will always pick up. But she was like that with all other patients in our group. So I was very fortunate that I had that resource. And it was free too. Not because I worked there, but it was free for all our patients. She did
Yeah.
this because, you know, that we need that in our community. And I
We do.
wish I have to look more into it in Richmond, but I wish there were more people like her who
Yeah.
are
That's just
selfless and who want to help women how to, you know, pass that gray area to continue trying to breastfeed because breastfeeding is wonderful for your kids. You know, all the nutrients, the bonding that you have with that baby. It,
yeah.
it's a wonderful thing. It's healthy, it's natural.
Yeah.
Oh, going back to natural. So I remember breastfeeding and I was at kid to kid, right? And there's no places to breastfeed. So I had to go into the what do you call it? The changing room and to feed her there. And the same like restaurants. There's no
Oh,
places to breastfeed.
yeah.
Unless, you know, I was like really like taking out my breast and breastfeeding the baby. I
Right.
didn't hear anybody's, you know, why are you doing that or anything like that. I just didn't want to hear anybody. So I just
Yeah.
went to the bathroom or I went to the changing room. But I just wish there were more you know, rooms for women to breastfeed while
Yeah.
they can enjoy a meal or go shopping.
Right.
We need to do better. We need to do
Yeah.
better with.
I think it's starting. I've noticed a few, like I recently saw a place like the renovated library sort of near us
Oh
had
yeah,
a,
library.
I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I know. I'm like, that's perfect with the kid areas and things like
Yeah.
that. So I think it's coming. I think people are, and like changing room or spaces for men to change diapers and things like that. I
Yes,
think
yes. Oh my God, it was a shame for my
starting.
husband. Yeah, so we our store back in the day would definitely Target because Target had a family. We went to stores that had the family, you know. We
Yeah.
avoided the other ones that you know, didn't have that access. Or like, you know, when if he would take the kids. And my partner, I mean, I hope you know, I don't know if you experienced the same way, but he was so great with them. He's still great with them. He maybe the girls were a little bit more like reserved as far as changing them, but anything else, let me get the baby. Let me help you
Yeah.
out. So
That's awesome.
that was wonderful to experience too, because
Yeah.
not a lot of men do that.
Yeah, and we have to give them like the opportunity to without these like bathrooms and changing rooms and things like that. It's like how are we expecting them to help us if they can't like go in anywhere?
Right,
So yeah, I think we're
right,
starting to do better, but we can continue on that path for sure. So but yeah, no, thank you so much
right.
for sharing your story. Is there anything else that you want to share or explain before we wrap it up?
To any mom, enjoy them, you know, even with their tantrums, take a breather, pinch yourself if you can control that anger. Oh, I remember that vividly. I just had to, you know, just breathe. If you have to cry, cry it out and then get back to it. These moments are just very short. They seem like a big problem then, but they're not.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back because look, I'm gonna cry now because
I know.
my kid is gonna be 20, my other
Oh,
one's gonna be 18, and then 10.
yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
by fast.
It goes by fast. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it in the moment, but it
No,
does.
why am I getting so emotional? But
I know. No, I
they're
hear
my
you.
babies.
They
I
are. They
love
always
them.
will be. They always will be. I still say that to mine, and mine are like, we're not babies. And I'm like, you don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
no,
yeah. Even my soon-to-be 10-year-old, like,
yeah,
don't give me a hug. I'm like, come here.
over here. You just let me.
Yeah, always be my babies. So,
Yeah.
anyways, just have the patience and enjoy the moments because they don't last.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
thank
take
you
care of
so much.
yourself if you can.
Yes, girl. Yes, yes, yes. Take care of yourself.
Find
You'll
those
be better.
resources. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to ask for help, you know? Don't.
Totally. Totally. If you're, I agree. Like if you think that it's selfish or too much for yourself, think that you'll be a better caregiver too. You'll be a better you
Right.
and a better caregiver. So it's for both. It's great. I agree. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I so appreciate you and you're just an awesome mama. So thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Of
All right.
course. It was so great talking to you.